Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com. So get this. They did a study on DEI, and the study basically said DEI is bullshit and has actually the opposite effect of what you're looking for. Well, here, a recent study by the Network Contagion Research, which sounds like they're trying to kill a virus. It's called the NCRI, and Rutgers University. They explored the psychological impacts of diversity, equity, and inclusion training, DEI training. The research indicated that exposure to certain DEI materials might increase hostility, authoritarian tendencies, and acceptance of extreme rhetoric among participants. Guess what? And then the New York Times and Bloomberg decided not to publish the research. And it led to discussions. Yeah. Oh, really? It's interesting that this falls under the heading of contagion research, right? Because this is scientific proof that being a mean, psychologically arrogant pageant float is contagious right up until the breaking point in 2024. But because now there's a cure on the horizon, and that cure is called free speech. So this guy wrote an article about it. This guy, Colin Wright, he is a CEO and editor of Chief of Reality's Last Stand. That's the name of this news site. And he's an evolutionary biology PhD, and he's a Manhattan Institute fellow. I'd like to be a fellow. I'm just a guy. I'm just a Manhattan Institute guy. I want to be a fellow. And he's written for lots of other places. So he did a thing, goes, why was the groundbreaking study on DEI silenced? I'll tell you why. You want to know why? Boy, I don't know. DEI, it's done such wonders for Bud Light and Jaguar. I don't know. Ooh, what are they gonna try next? I wonder. They say only assholes drive Jaguars. Well, watch this. And they show a guy driving into a tunnel, and he pulls out of his own colostomy. Colonoscopy. Oh, I mispronounced that. And I made that funnier. So they're hiding the information, Misha. Why? Why would they want to hide information saying that everything they support is bad for us? Why would they want to hide that?
I don't know.
Why would they want to contradict everything they've been saying for the last 10 years? Wow. It's not like they're actually making multiple billions of dollars doing this kind of garbage. So here it is. So here's from this guy's article. I'll just give you a snippet. In a stunning series of events, two leading media organizations, the New York Times and Bloomberg, abruptly shelved coverage of a groundbreaking study that raises serious concerns about the psychological impacts of diversity, equity, and inclusion pedagogy. Pedagogy means like curriculum, right? Isn't that what it means? What's the definition of pedagogy? The method and practice of teaching. Yes. Yeah, I got you. The study conducted by the blah, 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 in collaboration, blah, blah, blah. What does it find? It found that certain DEI practices could induce hostility, increase authoritarian tendencies, and foster agreement with extreme rhetoric. Wow. With billions of dollars invested annually in these initiatives, the public has a right to know if such programs, heralded as effective moral solutions to bigotry and hate, might instead be fueling the very problems they claim to solve. Yes, they are. Turns out, yes. You're making people hate each other more. You're making people identify with their skin color more. You're making people identify as a victim more. It makes them hate other people more. The decision to withhold coverage raises serious questions about transparency, editorial independence, and the growing influence of ideological biases in the media. The growing influence of ideological, that's where I want to nitpick with this guy, but Jesus age. I have one question. How is the deep state supposed to take over the world if we're all agreeing and getting along? That's the point of this. to make sure we're not all agreeing and getting along and able to come together to coalesce on economic grounds so we can oppose the oligarchy that is screwing everybody. So if we keep fighting over bigotry, hate, racism, white supremacy, and all kinds of phobias, transphobia, homophobia, misogyny, if we keep fighting over all those things that have gotten way better in my lifetime, way better, to the point where we elected a black guy president with a Muslim name overwhelmingly twice. Now, that didn't fix. There's still problems, but they're making them out to be it, that be all and end all. That's what DEI curriculum or pedagogy does. Boy, who would have thought abusing a group of people culturally for years and years, and then suddenly giving them a cudgel to hit the people who had nothing to do with it? Mm-hmm. That didn't work out. That's what they did. So you abuse these minority groups for years, and then all of a sudden you give them a cudgel to take it out on people who didn't have anything to do with it. So here we go. The NSRI study investigated the psychological effects of DEI pedagogy. There's that word again. Specifically training programs that draw heavily from texts like Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist and Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. Two of the biggest grifters in that, I don't know what you call that, in that lane. The findings were unsettling. Though, see, here's the books. You've seen these books, How to Be Anti-Racist, Ibram X. Kendi, and White Fragility. Why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism, Robin DiAngelo. So she's the one who got humiliated in Am I Racist?
Yes.
Complete nutbag. She's a these people are nuts. These people are making millions of dollars off of pushing racism. That's what they're doing. Because Martin Luther King said he looked forward to a society that judged people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And these people want to make it all about the color of your skin, which is the exact opposite. And now we have a study to prove that that's the exact opposite. The findings were unsettling, though perhaps not surprising to longstanding opponents of such programs. No, wasn't surprising to me. So, through carefully controlled experiments, the researchers demonstrated that exposure to anti-oppressive, i.e. anti-racist rhetoric, commonly in many DEI initiatives, consistently amplified perceptions of bias where none existed. So if you get trained in DEI, you're going to see bias where it doesn't exist. You're going to see everything through the lens of race or gender or sexuality or ethnicity. And so then everything seems biased to you, even when it doesn't exist. This is from a study. Participants were more likely to see prejudice in neutral scenarios and to support punitive actions against imagined offenders. So they want to punish people for prejudice that didn't exist, but they projected it onto them. These effects were not marginal. Hostility and punitive tendencies increased by double-digit percentages. Double-digit percentages across multiple measures. And I just wanted to let you know, and if you don't buy this book, you know what it means? It means you're racist.
That's right.
I just want you to know that. Perhaps most troubling, the study revealed a chilling convergence with authoritarian attitudes. Oh, no kidding. I wonder why people got so easily to become authoritarian and embrace authoritarianism during COVID. Because they've been primed through DEI for the last 15 years. Suggesting that such training is fostering not empathy, but coercion and control. That's what it is doing. And you better not have a different thought about anything, or you're going to be called a phobe or a racist or worse, a supremacist. The implications of these findings cannot be downplayed. DEI programs have become a fixture in workplaces, schools, and universities across the United States, with a 2023 Pew Research Center report indicating that more than half of the United States workers have had to attend some form of DEI training. Really? DEI thinking also leads parents to convince their children that they no longer identify with their gender and require castration. A little kid. The last thing that doctors should see is that kid standing over him in his bed. Institutions collectively spend approximately $8 billion annually on DEI initiatives, yet the NCRI study underscores how little scrutiny they receive. While proponents of DEI argue that these programs are essential to achieving equity and dismantling systemic oppression, turns out they're not. The data suggests that such efforts may actually be deepening divisions and cultivating hostility. Well, sons of bitch, huh? At Bloomberg, the story was squashed outright by an editor known for public support of DEI initiatives. So at Bloomberg, they quashed it. I thought it's squashed. I thought the word is, but I guess quashed works. Quashed? Is that a word? Did I leave the S off of that when I was putting this together? The editorial decision were so that they do this all the time. We just saw this with the thing about gender affirming care for kids. They don't want to print the study because it goes against their own bias. So the guy over at Bloomberg, or the person, the editor, could be a gal. Gals can do anything guys can do, especially boxing. At Bloomberg, the story was squashed outright by an editor known for public support, so they don't want to embarrass themselves. The editorial decisions were ostensibly justified as routine discretion, yet they align conspicuously with the ideological leanings of those involved. Are these major outlets succumbing to pressure to protect certain narratives at the expense of truth? That's a good question. Is that really? That's funny that was written as a question. Of course they are. Why soft pedal it? You're already in. You're already writing the article. Why soft pedal it? And that's right, shitlibs. For one bright and shining moment, you had all the power in the world, and you blew it like Kamala Harris's campaign blows money, or Nicolas Cage after every single film he makes. And how did you do it? Just by being yourselves. Mm-hmm. Your personality shone through, and we see right through you. Okay. Joel Finkelstein, the NCRI researcher leading the study of the editorial reversals, are as revealing as the data itself. Yes. In communications with reporters, he described the findings as sobering, with likely impact for DEI policy, as well as congressional impacts and potentially civil litigation. So this is going to impact everything. Lawsuits, how Congress writes laws. Finkelstein further stated that this seems like an effort to suppress research. Seems? What's with these fucking mealy-mouthed terms? It sure does seem like it. It seems like an effort to suppress research that challenges prevailing narratives around DEI and worryingly implicates standard practices for egregious harms. Now, I had to read that several times before I figured out what that sentence meant. So it implicates standard practice. So what it's saying is that this new research is saying that the way they've been doing things actually is harmful. That's what that sentence means. It's hard to understand smart people when they talk, right? They talking. And worryingly, it implicates standard practices for egregious harms. What in the F are you talking about? What they're saying is, so the way they've been doing that and implementing DEI has actually been harmful. And he puts the qualifier egregious. Egregiously harmful. Across multiple experiments, the study documented a consistent pattern. Exposure to anti-oppressive DEI rhetoric heightened participants' tendency to attribute hostility and bias to ambiguous situations. In one experiment, participants read excerpts from Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi's book, and then they juxtaposed that against a neutral controlled text about. So some people read from their books, and then another group didn't. They read something about corn production. Okay, so that's called the control group. The people who didn't read the book, they just read something neutral. That's called the control group. Afterwards, they were asked to evaluate a hypothetical scenario, an applicant being rejected from an elite university. Those exposed to the DEI materials were far more likely to perceive racism in the admission process, despite there was no evidence to support that there was any racism in the admission process. There was no evidence. But the people who read from those books, they projected it onto that neutral scenario. That's the effect of DEI training. They were also more likely to advocate punitive punishing people for nothing, such as suspending the admission officer or mandating additional DEI training, which is worse than suspension. Yeah, so a particularly revealing aspect of the study focused on DEI training centered on Islamophobia. Listen to this. So they were using materials developed by the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, the ISPU. Oh, PU. The findings echoed the broader concerns of the study, but offered unique insights into how DEI programming shapes perceptions of bias and fairness. And what did they do? Well, they presented participants with a scenario involving two fictional individuals, one guy named Ahmed Akhtar and another guy named George Green, both convicted of identical terrorism charges. When participants were exposed to the ISPU-inspired training materials, their perception of Ahmed's trial was significantly altered. They rated it far less fair than George's trial, despite the trials being described in exactly identical terms. That's the effect. They're inventing bias and racism where it doesn't exist. That's what this is telling you. The discrepancy highlights a core issue with DEI narratives that emphasize systemic oppression. By priming participants to see injustice against specific groups, these trainings appear to cultivate a hostile attribution bias, a tendency to perceive prejudice and discrimination where none exists. While sensitivity to genuine bias is critical, the NCRI findings suggest that DEI interventions like the ISPU materials may create unwarranted distrust in institutions and undermine confidence in objective fairness. Participants exposed to materials from Equality Labs, Jesus H. F. and Christ, a prominent provider of anti-caste training, were significantly more likely to perceive bias and endorse dehumanizing rhetoric, including adapted quotes from Adolf Hitler, where the term Jew was replaced with Brahmin. The findings suggest that these programs may not only fail to address systemic injustice, but actively cultivate divisive and authoritarian mindsets. This is exactly what we've been saying. That this is here not to help people, not to lift people up, but to divide us and to keep us hating each other and blaming each other and seeing ourselves as victims. That's all this DEI stuff does. Critics of DEI have long pointed to its lack of empirical support, and the NCRI study adds weight to those concerns. Research cited in the report highlights how many DEI programs rely on untested theories or unverified self-reports with little oversight or accountability. In 2021, a meta-analysis found that some initiatives not only failed to reduce prejudice, but actually exacerbate it, fueling resentment and perceptions of unfairness. These people are being taught to see themselves as victims and view everything through the lens of race, skin color, ethnicity, and sexuality and gender. The whole world. And it's fucking up our culture. The NCRI study findings echo these conclusions, suggesting that far from fostering inclusion, DEI programs may perpetuate a cycle of suspicion and punitive retribution. So it makes people want to get back at other groups of people. So if you see yourself as being victimized, then you want to get back at that group you think is victimizing you. And then the people who you're trying to get back at feel like they're being victimized by you because they are, because now you're unfairly attacking them, calling them phobes and racists and supremacists and agonists. Yet, as troubling as the study's findings are, its suppression may be even more, and then they suppressed it. Something that can help actually bring people together, they suppress that. That's because the media is there to divide us. That's what this is really saying. The decision to withhold this research from public discourse speaks to a larger issue, the growing entanglement of ideology and information. It really goes to how the establishment wants to keep us siloed, hating each other and fighting amongst ourselves so we don't realize we have more in common than divides us and come together to overthrow the oligarchy and take back our country economically. In a moment when public trust in institutions is already fragile, the media's role as a gatekeeper of information becomes all the more worrying. Believe me, the media is shitting their pants right now because they realize that through places like Twitter and shows like this, that we are no longer going through the establishment gatekeepers, and they are freaking out. I have this other segment coming up later in the show to show you how the establishment media is freaking out that there's citizen journalists that are actually exposing the lies of the establishment media. When powerful outlets like the New York Times and Bloomberg withhold stories of such significance, they fracture trust with their trust is already, it should have been gone a long time ago. It should have been fractured a long time ago when they lied to us about the Vietnam through 4 different presidents, when they lied about Iraq in 1992, when they lied about Iraq again in 2001, when they lied about Libya, when they lied about Syria, when they lied about January 6th, when they lied about COVID and vaccines and lockdowns and masks, when they lied about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, when they lied to you at the top of their lungs about all the most important things in the world. They're currently lying to you right now about Ukraine. That should have been over. Why anybody, but most of my asswipe friends in Hollywood still believe the mainstream news media. They believe the narrative around the Ukraine war. They believe it. They believe Assad attacked his own people with gas. They believe we had to overthrow Gaddafi. They believe anything they're told. Anything they're told. They believe everything they're told about Ukraine. They have no idea that the United States and NATO provoked that war on purpose and want to keep it going. Have you all heard about Colostrum? You've all heard of it by now, right? It's been the best kept secret of industry insiders for a while, but word's finally getting out, and for good reason. Colostrum is everywhere these days. And when I first heard about it, I thought it was almost too good to be true. Thousands and thousands of people reporting absolutely transformational health benefits, tens of thousands of 5-star reviews, and life-changing stories. Colostrum is the first nutrition we receive in life, and it's an exclusive source of all the essential nutrients we need in order to thrive. Colostrum is a proprietary concentrate of bovine colostrum that harnesses over 400 functional nutrients. Colostrum has been known to strengthen immunity, improve gut health, ignite metabolism. I need some metabolism igniting, I'll tell you that. Vitalize hair growth. I could certainly use that. Enhance skin radiance. Who doesn't need that? I bet you Dr. Drew takes this because he's got fantastic skin. Mm-hmm. And fuel performance and recovery. We worked out a special offer for my audience. You can receive 15% off your first order. Go to tryarmra.com/Jimmy or enter Jimmy and get 15% off your first order. That's tryarmra.com/Jimmy. Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com.